Cigar Thoughts broadcast, hosted graciously here at the Glow Nightclub in downtown Bellingham. With me, as usual, are Matt Nichols, former all-conference offensive lineman at Pacific Lutheran University, helped them win a national championship, and Brent Cole, editor of What's Up magazine. We're coming to you after the Seahawks' 6th win in their last 7 games, starting to, I think, see the natural annual evolution of this team from figuring out who they are to deciding who they are to enforcing that on the rest of the league. And, it's coming on the back of 2 dominant victories against bad teams. Well, actually, Minnesota. I contend is not. They're not bad. I contend that they're not as good as.
They were leading their division at the time.
And the Ravens had only lost by 8?
Yeah, they've been competitive. They hadn't been blown out like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Ever.
So I mean, it's not.
It's true,
shit
right?
city.
I'm trying to set up the opposition.
Do you want us to
here,
make
like
it more
that?
difficult for
Maybe
you?
just saying that there's some arguments against the recent success that I'm trying to get through. But yeah, those arguments are bunk. They're playing really, really good football. What were you guys' main takeaways? And Brent, I want to start with you. Coming off of that game's over. Let's see, is it 35-6?
Yeah.
That it ended up being? Lost track. It's that kind of game.
Yeah.
It's 35-6, Sunday afternoon. How were you feeling?
Fantastic. I was feeling. Obviously, we've been feeling that the team is back and we're rolling and whatnot. We'll go into a little later after that first half. I was not feeling quite as electric about things, but they've really just turned it on the second half, and they were phenomenal. It's what we've been waiting for most of the season. It's what we've waited for. Last season, we didn't see wins like this. Where they were this dominant, and I'm ready. It's getting to that point where game's over, and all I'm doing is looking at Twitter. Monday, all I'm doing is looking at Twitter, talking to friends about football. Nothing. Family, wife, all that stuff is being put aside, and it's back to that excitement about the Seahawks again.
Yeah, and Matt, they're doing it with offense now, at least as much as they are with defense.
If not more.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
It's funny you say that, because I tweeted out the other day, or maybe it was this morning, that this is the first year in the Pete Carroll era that I think the Seahawks offense would beat the Seahawks defense.
Absolutely.
I haven't felt that case. What are they doing?
I think we've seen that offensive line finally gel and become one group, where it's not 5 individuals, it's the best 5 that are out there, and they're playing very well. We are seeing quick plays. We're seeing guys get in and out of the huddle quick, plays getting off quick. They're finding a rhythm. And then there's that belief factor. And when you get belief in yourself and momentum, again, it's that tidal wave that doesn't matter what comes, you're going to have a counter to it. So if the Ravens want to run a cover 1, Doug Baldwin's going to run an over route for a touchdown. Or if they want to run a cover 0, he's going to hit him on a post route for a touchdown. It doesn't matter what the other team's doing, because Seattle is playing from a position where they feel like they already have the answers to the tests before the test is even handed out. We're also seeing, again, one of the reasons I do this podcast with you guys is because it's smart, intelligent football. We're not freaking out the day after a loss and emotional like everybody else. What we've seen most recently is not the only thing that's ever happened.
Right.
And we have talked about throughout the beginning of this season, through the middle of the season, and now into the last quarter of the season, this is a very talented team, but they are that razor's edge away from being a very good team. We're seeing them climb that mountain and become a very good team. And it's happening in all phases of the game. And when something goes wrong, like Stephen Hauschka missing 3 extra points in 2 weeks, he comes back and he's kicked, 12 in a row? Now without missing. I mean, we're seeing them correct errors that are being made, and they've done that throughout. Kerry Williams, he's getting beat over the top, so we're going to make a replacement to his position. But really, this game, that offensive line was fantastic. And they have been for the last 5-6 weeks. We're just always a little late to catch up and see how really well they've been playing.
But I think that's actually, you talk about the improvement all around, at least on the offensive side, every single thing comes from that offensive
Absolutely.
line. Now Russell is not really scared. He can make better decisions. He is now finding this rhythm that he didn't have before. The receivers now are, Russ is doing what he's supposed to do, so they're going to the spots that they're supposed to do. And everything. You've seen it ad nauseum on Twitter. You have that of all the reasons why, or this is going on, and I think it just, when you bring it down to boil it right down, it's all about that offensive line giving them the actual time that you're supposed to have for the plays that they're running, and Russell Wilson taking advantage of that time instead of ditching out early because he's about to get his ass kicked.
It's the least sexy position group on a football team, hands down, bar none. Nobody cares about the offensive linemen unless they do something bad. You never notice when they do something well unless you're paying attention to that. This group has really gelled since Patrick Lewis came in, and I don't know if it was just that change to him,
right,
or it was Justin Britt getting those first 5 games and struggling at left guard, and Gary Gilliam struggling at right tackle, and then it all kind of coagulated perfectly at the same time. But whatever the reason is, that those 5 people are playing very, very well. Darryl Bevel and Tom and Pete are also doing things to help that offensive line in pass protection, in run blocking. They're keeping extra guys in, or they're using a tight end to chip in pass plays. One of the over routes that Doug Baldwin scores his second touchdown on, if you look at it, there's 4 receivers to the left, 1 to the right, but they use Fred Jacson on the left to chip block the DN, and Luke Wilson on the right to chip block the DN before they release out into routes. So that helps the tackles get a little bit more depth and slows down that rush. So they're doing things to help this team in unison within the pass pro.
It's not
that is
they
giving
weren't
them
trying to find those things
in
week 3 or 4, but what they had been doing there wasn't effective, and now the little pieces have fallen into place and making it so that you can work on the other little pieces.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden you have a unit that is gelling like
and we talked about it the very first week. I mean, I think one of the first podcasts I talked about, we talked how hard would it be for Justin Britt to move from right tackle to left guard, and it's hard to move from outside to inside because you're used to playing in space, and then you have to be able to fight in a phone booth, let alone go from one side to the other side where your stance is totally different. His right foot is now forward, his left hand is down, where it's always been the opposite, with his left foot forward and his right foot down. So I know how difficult it is for me when I put my pants on with the opposite leg first. Just try doing that on a professional football level out there with guys trying to take your head off. So all of these things where they have gotten the, probably 500 plus game reps of blocking, of tackling, of all that, is really coming to fruition, and we're seeing them just play masterful football right now.
Yeah.
Really good football.
Jackson, did you want to add anything?
Oh, this is great. The thing that I think is standing out to me so much is, I think we've all known that Seattle has been able to be very efficient passing the football, right? They pick their spots when they go downfield, but they make sure that they go downfield. In terms of, expected win percentage added, a downfield pass is the best play you can run, especially with the way the pass interference is called, right? I mean, there's a very good chance that you're going to get yards either through a reception or through a penalty, and you don't actually see a whole lot of interceptions on deep balls unless they're thrown into double coverage. So I think the Seahawks have always understood that. The question has always been, can they do it in volume?
Yeah.
And when Thomas Rawls went down, and we'll get to that because it's definitely a very significant point in that game in the season moving forward, but the run game wasn't there anymore. I mean, this was their worst rush game in like 4 years, 3.4 yards per carry. They had to pass in volume. And really, this is kind of the 4th game in a row that they've passed with volume. And what we're seeing isn't just, yes, Russell Wilson and these receivers can handle that load. They're doing it at a rate never before seen in the NFL by any team. And when you think about the teams like the Drew Brees Saints or the Marino Dolphins, Brady's run,
Kurt Warner and the Rams.
Rodgers, right. I mean, some amazing offenses that are built around doing this all the time. No one has ever had a passer efficiency rating higher over a 4-game stretch, any 4-game stretch, any quarterback, than Russell Wilson's 145.9. And he's throwing to a bunch of undrafted guys and a rookie.
Which I want to touch
go
on.
ahead.
I mean, we've talked about the undrafted, and we've hit on that a million times, but I think there might be something that's not brought up that often, and that is that for receivers, it always takes 3 or 4 years to learn the position. Maybe part of this too is just that Doug Baldwin now really knows how to run the routes and does it with perfection. Maybe Curse really is approaching that point where he has sucked in the last couple of years and has gotten all the information, and it's now really starting to come out. Not that they weren't as good last year, but there's just a special oomph, and maybe it's a matter of just an overall maturation that's finally occurring.
And when they're getting the opportunities, they're not dropping the ball. And there was a couple uncharacteristic drops in this game. Luke Wilson on what would have been a touchdown.
Could have been his ribs because you don't know when he got
and then Doug Baldwin also with a drop. But coming into this game, they were some of the lowest in the NFL.
I just want a side note, that Doug Baldwin play, if you're referring to the one where he was going in the back sideline, did he end up dropping that? Cause
No. There was a different one in the middle of the field.
Not that.
That one might have been a touchdown. That was unbelievable.
That was, because I was going to say, that's maybe the best play I've ever seen Russell Wilson make.
Yes. How Russell gets that ball into that location, phenomenal. I mean, there's nothing like that. No, there was another one that Doug had earlier in the game.
Yeah, his first drop of the year, I believe.
Yeah. So when they're getting the opportunities, they're not letting them slip through their hands. This team is clicking, and you can see it on all areas. The receiving corps is playing really well.
Yeah, and someone make sure we get back to Tyler Lockett as well, because I want to talk about Tyler Lockett.
I mean, that's absurd.
Okay, let's talk about Tyler Lockett right now.
I mean, when your name is being floated in with Gale Sayers, that's holy shit.
You're referring
that's
to...
It is what, 5 touchdowns?
Yeah.
In the rookie season, 5 plus a kick return and a punt return. So I think he has 7 this year. 5 receiving, and so that's
crazy.
Gale Sayers is the only one who's done that. That's...
Tyler Lockett was the 10th wide receiver drafted this year, and I think he's having the best. Am I missing someone besides Amari Cooper?
No.
Is he? I mean, so my point being that Tyler Lockett's production right now, as a guy who is a kick returner that may or may not grow into an NFL receiver, we're talking about first round receiver production.
Yes,
like it's crazy what he's done. The fact that on the season, Russell Wilson has completed 87% of his targets to Tyler Lockett. 87% to a rookie. That has to be a record. He's taken some shots the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, he's gotten really tough ones.
He's gotten two 15-yard penalties. I mean, he's added 30 yards on top of his receiving total just because of the penalties he's taken on that. And if you notice the one on the sidelines this time where he drew the penalty, he catches it one-handed.
Well,
and I didn't notice that at first. He catches it one-handed and then gets his second hand over as he gets absolutely railed. That is an unbelievable catch.
Man.
He's special. And the go route in which he gets the touchdown, that cornerback is sitting 8 yards off of him. And he blows by that ball. And Russell even underthrows it a little bit. And he's still by the goal.
Ladarius Webb.
Yeah.
He just got retired by a rookie.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite college football highlights of all time is Tyler Lockett just stealing Jason Verrett's soul in college. Jason Verrett, first round draft pick from the Chargers, maybe the best corner coming out of college. And Lockett runs this little 10-yard hitch and go, but it's like a hitch and a go, and he throws a jab step towards the middle of the field in there somewhere, and he's just gone. And Verrett is running the other direction, and Lockett's gone. And I just remember thinking, I don't know how many guys in the NFL could have their feet hit the ground that many times in that many different directions in such a small period of time and space. And that's not really a teachable skill. That is something that is just different genetically. And I think he's learning how to harness it and learning how to beat the advanced schemes of the NFL and beat bigger cornerbacks that are trying to, bully him on the line. I mean, we're about to talk about one of my favorite players, but this is Antonio Brown type stuff that he's doing with his routes.
Well, and you're seeing, again, there's a symbiotic relationship between all of the receivers and Russell right now. And so if one of them is getting a safety over the top, Russ is just going to the other receivers. You saw Tyler draw a double team on one of Baldwin's touchdowns. which frees him up. They are just playing. All of these guys are doing their role, but not just their role. They're doing it in unison with their partners. And when you get people not just doing their job, but doing it at the way it's supposed to be, with the timing it's supposed to be, it makes all the difference to a route tree and to a progression for a quarterback.
During the game, you were texting Brent and I after the Baldwin touchdowns, and you just mentioned one about how Tyler Lockett drew a double team, and we were talking about the hottest receiver in the game right now, right? In the numbers that he's putting up 8 touchdowns in 3 games after 15 in his first 72, historic streak for Doug Baldwin. He's running a route that he's scored on a few times, and they still double the rookie. Like that's crazy. You know, that play that Doug Baldwin, that wide open touchdown, that one was on film. You know, and in a second, I want you to talk about how that play works. But that's a crazy thing. That means either they are respecting him as a legit deep threat, or he ran his route perfect enough to draw 2 people, or both. But either way, that is super exciting from a 3rd-round pick in his first year.
Yeah. Well, and when we dive into this play, we'll get into a little bit more of the specifics. But he is so fast, and he can get on the DBs in such a short amount of time that it forces a safety to come help over the top, because he's typically by the coverage. And if not, we've seen that his hands are good enough that he will catch those passes. So it really puts that safety in a bind, where he has to take one or the other. He doesn't get to take both, so he gets to take one or the other.
Talk about that play, because you were showing it to me before the podcast, and I asked you, is that the same play he scored on against Pittsburgh? And you said yes, but from a different formation.
Yeah, and I think it was Pittsburgh, but I know for sure it was Minnesota. And it's just a concept where they're starting off with at least 3 receivers to one side. Okay. And the first time, so they had 3 receivers to the left. Russell was in a shotgun formation. Fred Jacson was to his right, and Luke Wilson was off of Gary Gilliam's right-hand side, but flexed out just a little bit, but in a standing position. What they were doing is they're using Luke Wilson to run a drag route across. He's basically bumping the DM to slow him down to help Gary Gilliam get a little bit more time to pass pro. He's running a drag route across. Fred Jackson's checking to see if there's anybody blitzing, and then he's releasing out into the flat. So those 2 guys are basically the outlets. If everything breaks down, that's where the ball's got to go, if it has to go that fast, because these routes that the 3 receivers are running are a little bit slower, can be a little slower moving. What happened on the outside is you had Kearse on the outside running a go route. You had then Tyler Lockett, the second receiver in from the sideline, running a go, and he starts to break it towards the post to hold the safety. And then you get Doug Baldwin, who is the inside receiver of the 3, the far inside, who's running what we call a deep over route. Where as he is going across the field, he is gaining route. So a drag route, as you're going across the field, you're basically staying at about the same yard line the whole way across. But an over route, as you're going across the field, you're gaining depth and getting farther away from the quarterback or away from the line of scrimmage. And what he is doing is, an over route makes it a little harder for a DB to cover, because you're not running in one plane. You're gaining width and depth with it. And with Lockett's speed, he can hold that safety. Baltimore was in a cover 1, so they only rushed 4. They had man across the board, and it's one of the things that Seattle will do a lot is they'll bring Cam Chancellor down to be a robber or somebody who comes down to play crossing routes. And against Denver, for example, Thomas across the middle blows them up. That's what a robber does with how Seattle does it with Cam Chancellor as a robber. So Baltimore brings their strong safety down, and Lockett holds the free safety, and Baldwin just runs right across the face of the free safety. Easy touchdown for him. And they've run that play. I know they ran it against Minnesota for a touchdown. They ran it twice in this game for touchdowns, and I believe they ran it at one point in the Pittsburgh game too. So it's been a concept that's just worked very well for them.
So this over route, and it's to Doug Baldwin every time. They've been running this with some consistency over the last 3 weeks. It's kind of like when you find that one play on Madden that just works against a certain defense, right? So you just keep going back to the well. How do you defend this? If it's that easy, why doesn't Doug Baldwin have 30 touchdowns this year?
Yeah.
Or will he keep going at this pace?
No. Just to believe that he will continue to go at this pace, I think, is crazy. This is a pace that is NFL historic good, so to think that it will continue at that pace, whereas the beginning of the season, we always talked about them getting back to the mean with turnovers and stuff like that. Let's also talk about getting back to the mean and a more normal. It's a play that's really good against a cover one because you have the one safety and you have the two go routes on one side and then the inside guy running an over route. It's really good against that because it puts that single high safety in a bind. Against a cover two safety, though, if you're running that over route, you're running towards that backside safety. So it's not something that against that defense, this is a concept that we used at PLU sometimes. It's not something that you would typically run against a cover two just because there's that backside safety that's sitting there waiting for that over route to come over. But when they're seeing a cover one or a cover zero, this is a route combination you can go to at any time. The other thing, so the second touchdown that he had, they came out in 4 receivers to the left-hand side. So again, Baldwin, Lockett, and Curse. But then Fred Jacson, as opposed to being in the backfield right next to Russ, was split out to the left. But he was close enough to Russell Okung where he could chip again and then get out in the flats. Luke Wilson was on the right-hand side again. He chipped, and as opposed to running a drag route, he just ran out to the right sideline a little bit. So again, those are the two guys that if this play breaks down quickly, if somebody whiffs on their block, those are your hot routes or your guys that you're going to go to. But the O-line in both of these situations did a masterful job of blocking. And as cool as all these route concepts are, you could basically run anything with the pocket that Russell had during both of those plays. I mean, there wasn't a person within 3 yards of him. I mean, he had just solid pockets. Double teams on guys that were pressuring Baltimore one time, kind of had a little spy there. So Seattle had a double team right on the nose. Gilliam did a beautiful job. Okung did a great job. But when you have a pocket like that, you can run any combination of routes that you want.
That's actually, you mentioned the spy, and that was something. If you have any thoughts on that, that would be great, because so many teams now have a spy just for Russ. How does that then affect the back end, and how does that help the receivers?
So you're either going to have one less safety playing deep, or you're going to have one less D lineman rushing. If you're going to have that spy concept, and teams have done this against Russell, and they've done it against Michael Vick and Colin Kaepernick, and the spy is nothing new. One of the things that you'll see spies do is they'll line up on the D line sometimes, or it'll look like a blitzing linebacker, but then he'll just kind of stay about a yard behind where the line of scrimmage is and watch Russ the whole time. This was not a running game for Russ. This was not one of the games where he needed to run or that he had to run. We got in a rhythm in the second half where it didn't dictate that we need to run that zone read and maybe get Russ to break a few plays. There was none of that in this game.
But then conversely, if the receivers, if the offense is clicking so well, they might need to pull that safety back, which very well could then free up Russ.
Which means that they don't have a guy that... That's exactly it. And defense, every defense has a weakness. So versus a cover zero, so a cover zero is they are playing man-to-man on all of your receivers, and they are blitzing more than you can block. So if you have 5 offensive linemen blocking and 5 men out in the route, they're covering with 5 guys, and they're sending 6. So your quarterback has to get rid of the ball right away. That's one of those where if you hit it, it could be a 90-yard touchdown, and nobody will ever touch your receiver because there's no safety help over the top. Cover one, it's kind of the same way. If you can get a safety to move one side, you can hit the receiver down the other sideline. Cover two, the reason there's Tampa 2 now, where they track that middle linebacker and they drop him deeper down the seam, is because the seam route with a tight end or with a slot receiver was wide open in a cover 2 because you would get receivers running down the sidelines, safeties to split, and then the middle was open. And then we saw what against Seattle, what Carolina did with cover 3 with running flood routes where you get a guy in the flat, a guy in the deep flat, and then a guy deeper all on one sideline where you layer the defensive coverage. You're in front of the linebackers, behind the linebacker, and then your third one is right at the cornerback or behind the cornerback. And we saw the Cardinals do a masterful job of that. So every defense has a weakness. Every zone has a Every zone has a weakness. Every man defense has a weakness. But it's about recognizing them pre-snap. And Russell is recognizing, and the offensive line and the receivers are recognizing stuff pre-snap. That makes a huge difference.
Well, now it was my understanding is that before when it was Drew at center, Russell was having to go up and do the protection calls. So then that frees him up to handle more of what he's supposed to do.
Exactly, and that was my understanding of it too. Was Drew was just so new, didn't know it. Patrick Lewis wasn't the best communicator, and they told him that is one of the things that's holding you back, and he's really gotten good at that. But if they're getting out of the huddle too, so they're getting personnel groups in quickly, and I think this is one of the things that kind of goes unnoticed with football, and something back at PLU we were really good at doing at times, and then at other times we were really bad at doing. And I can tell you from personal experience, when you can get the right people in the huddle, call the right play, and get up to the line of scrimmage, and you're not looking at the play clock at 4 and 5 seconds, it gives you time to scan the defense.
15.
If you're looking at 15, that's heaven. If you're looking at more than 10, you're in a great position.
Right.
Because the quarterback can start his cadence, and the defense is going to start to tip. All defenses have some sort of a tip or a tell. Oftentimes you'll see blitzers come off of the side for like a cornerback or a nickel blitz. You'll see a safety right over the top. So you'll see a stacked safety. That oftentimes is a blitz. We would see, as an offensive lineman, you can see defensive linemen's hands. And if they're putting a lot of pressure on their hand, but they're kind of leaning one way, you know which way they're slanting. So the more time you have at the line of scrimmage, the more opportunity you have to look at the canvas that's in front of you and figure out, okay, from all of my hours of film study this week, in this situations they like to do this. Is it matching with what my study is? Yes, it is. Okay, now let's look for more finer points to see where they're at. There was one guy, I remember there was an all-conference D end that they moved to D tackle, and in film study I picked up that he only did a spin move one way. And just that little nugget, as soon as he started a spin move, I knew exactly where he was going to end up at, and you could jump it to stop him.
Right.
But there's those things that when you have time at the line of scrimmage and you're not running to get plays off, everything opens up for you, and you can make audibles. If you get to the line with 3 seconds, you're either having to run the same play or you're having to call a timeout. When you're getting up there with 15 seconds, if you see something, and oftentimes you'll call a play, and the defense will have the right defense, and you're screwed. Like, you're like, tip your hat, we'll live to play another day. But if you have time, you can come up and, all right, hold on, let's make a change, whatever your audible system is, and then just go from there. And we saw, let's go back to the Cincinnati game where Russell comes up, and was it Jermaine Kearse that had the touchdown down the right sideline? I think it was Jermaine, where he comes up and he goes, easy, easy, easy. He is literally telling everybody, relax, we got time. We're changing either protection or the route combination or the player or all of it. But he had enough time to say easy, 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 which is that or relax are pretty common to say, chill, everybody, we're changing stuff. And then they got a touchdown off of it. And I think it was Jermaine in the first drive or second drive of the game. But when you have time, when you have the right people in there, it doesn't matter what a defense runs, you can change up your play. And they're getting to the line of scrimmage with that time, and they're not having to burn timeouts.
So
and when you're on the field and you know, all right, versus this team and this defense, we're going to go to this play automatically. And we would put in at PLU. I mean, far from major football, far from the NFL with the amount of time they have.
Farther than I ever.
But we would put in 12 to 15 new plays for each team every week, on top of our playbook, which had hundreds of plays in it. So we would have specific plays for specific situations against specific teams. And if we came up and they were in a specific defense that we saw, we would make an audible at the line of scrimmage and just go with it because we knew it was going to be there because of what you'd seen in film the whole week studying. So yeah, and they're in that position right now where everything's clicking. And I can tell you from personal experience, when you start to get that momentum, you never think about losing. It's only about just getting better and better and better at your craft, and not even winning 35-6 or whatever, but just let's score a touchdown every play. I mean, we always talked. There were some games where you watch film and you're terrified of this team, and then you look up at halftime and you're like, damn, we're up 42-3 right now, and you get ready to loosen your shoulder pads at halftime because you know your backups are going in, and that's a phenomenal feeling. but they're in kind of one of those rhythms right now where it's like it doesn't matter what the team can do.
2012 again.
Yeah,
where it was just when they went through that cycle of teams, and then,
Yeah, I mean, and it's crazy too because it's like, one of the things I said during the game, Russell Wilson's out there, he's just seeing ones and zeros right now. Like it's amazing because I think more now than ever before in his career, even in 2012, we're seeing a rhythm and a confidence from everybody involved on the offense. And we're finally getting to see, okay, what is Russell Wilson capable of when he's not running for his life, when he's got receivers who are getting open on time, when he's got he's always kind of had a killer running game, but a more versatile running game that, that he's had. Now everything is in Russell Wilson's favor, and he's not accounting for deficiencies anymore. He gets to play puppeteer and make everything dance. And what we're seeing is some of the best quarterback play that the NFL has ever seen, which is super encouraging because Thomas Rawls broke his ankle. And that, it was so crazy because even as I was writing up, and part of this has to do because I owned him in 2 fantasy leagues and it was the playoffs this year. But even as this week, just even as a Seahawks fan, as a football fan in general, as I was writing about this 29-point victory, there's just kind of that man, something really, really special about this season is gone now for the rest of the season. Yeah. And I never expected Thomas Rawls to be the kind of guy whose injury threatens to overshadow a huge win. But he seems like kind of that guy. So while it is extremely encouraging to know that the Seahawks can pass at a high volume for all of the reasons you mentioned and more, their identity, as long as Pete Carroll is living and breathing, will always be with the run first. To me, it didn't look like DeJuan Harris was the answer. The team obviously agrees. They released him today. But, Brent, I want to know, as you're watching that game, you kind of started our text conversation during the game after Rawls went down and the offense kind of sputtered, and you texted, the Ravens have hope. What were you feeling during that first half when Rawls was down and it looked like they may be playing one of those ugly games?
Well, I think you sent me the text of classic trap game, and it kind of had that vibe. And when he goes down, you just got this what turned out to be momentary, little time period where the team became deflated. The team became a bit more human quickly. And I don't remember the exact marker who went down, but up until the 1 minute mark of the second quarter, the teams it was 7-3. Yeah. It was, both quarterbacks were 10 of 16. What did we come up with? It was
close to 120 and Russell at 106.
Yeah, 106, something like that. So the QBs were close, which is
not what you expected.
Not what you expected, and not what you saw at the end result. And so it was the defense was allowing a lot more than you expected. It was like the team for just this half felt like they had lost their heart. This young kid who was this story, and was carrying the team in his own way. And it was a hell of a kick in the gut, and it made the Ravens seem like a very worthy foe. Yeah. And then it stopped, and they really kind of. And when I rewatched the game, I mean, I was really shocked because the first half it was just like, oh shit, this is not a good game. This isn't. This is we had the butt fumble, and then when we got it back and we scored, and they scored 14-6, and then when we went into the second half, which is what in hindsight that's kind of what they do. Yeah, they keep it cool the first half. They go into the second half, and that's when they put on their jets. They were able to overcome it, but I think the loss of Rawls really affected the team, at least in the short term.
And this was actually a pretty brutal game for injuries overall. Cam Chancellor was out early with bruised tailbone, which if you've ever done it, Yeah, I mean, it's like
painful.
It's like tooth pain in that you can't think about anything else. Luke Wilson with his ribs, Deshaun Ched apparently, Marcus Burley apparently,
Michael Bennett's toe.
Michael Bennett's toe is in a boot
now.
Mm-hmm.
So and look, every single
As you
team
would expect,
has
though,
this.
against the Ravens, you would expect an incredibly physical game.
One of the things that Danny and I always talk about on our podcast where we pick NFL games is how the back half of the season is just a war of attrition.
Yep.
Right? And unless you're one of the few relatively healthy teams standing, you really have to adapt what your viewpoint of a team is almost from week to week, certainly from month to month, in terms of, what is their actual talent level.
Yeah.
And the Seahawks have been pretty fortunate this year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Marshawn Lynch is a huge injury. And they've had guys miss games, Bruce Irvin,
Jimmy Graham.
Jimmy Graham,
I mean,
of course. That's a
it's
huge one,
funny
too.
that- but
Right,
see,
right.
But you would say they've been lucky.
They have had a ton.
if-
They've had a ton of
yeah, it's-
injuries.
they're-
It's true. I guess it's
If
just
you look at your offense as the three superstars, Russell Wilson, Marshawn Lynch, Jimmy Graham, two of those three are out.
If you look at what the Ravens have gone through from the sheer number
Yes,
of
what's
people
it,
on
16?
16 or 17,
Yeah.
I think they put their 17th guy on it. We have not had anything like that.
No. And that's like
and that's just, I mean, you
Yeah.
can just see how depleted they
John
are.
Harbaugh deserves like a courtesy 15th place coach of the year vote for them being competitive in every single game except this one without
absolutely.
all of their best players.
One of the things where injuries really start to creep up, and it's not necessarily always the number of injuries that you have, but the number that you have at a single position group. And that's what's getting a little concerning now, because the secondary...
P. Rich. Well, I mean, sorry to go back to when I mentioned that. Well, it just dawned on me. P. Rich.
One game and back on.
Yeah.
So the secondary now, we got three guys of our starting five, or of our normal five, that have some sort of injury. Two tight ends. Jimmy's gone. Luke might be. Who knows? Running back, top two, gone. It's when you start to go to those third, fourth, fifth guys, and it's always next man up, but there's a drop-off of talent. Yeah. Because, let's be honest, Bryce Brown has been cut 3 times by this team, or twice by this team, and signed 3 times. They haven't been around the program the whole time. There's always a step off. And so it's when you start to get deep into those position groups that it can really start to manifest itself and show.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting to see. Now, there's no such thing as an easy game, right? That is purely a
No, it's not. But there is no such thing as an easy game. But there has to be an element of, oh, thank God the Panthers aren't coming in.
Sure.
And we have the Browns coming in.
Right. Yeah. Now, within the fishbowl of the NFL, there's definitely a difference in the size of fish.
Yeah.
Right? But they're all still piranhas, and they're all still really capable. The worst team's best game will beat the best team's off game in the NFL, right? It's not like you're, high school where the number 1 5A team can, mail in a game and they'll beat the worst 1A team. Right? That's the talent is still really close. So there's no easy games, but it is nice, now that caveat's out of the way, that it is Cleveland at home, that it is St. Louis at home, over these next 2 weeks, because outside of Rawls, it looks like the rest of these injuries are kind of a week-to-week issue. Yeah. So the season really starts. I mean, now that, Football Outsiders has them as basically 99.5% locked to make the playoffs, the season really starts that Week 17 game. And they have a couple of weeks to get healthy. And even though there's no such thing as an easy win in the NFL, it is nice that you're getting maybe the worst team in the NFL, or probably, since it'd be the 49ers last week, the second worst team in the NFL. Just trying to be objective here. At home. I mean, the one thing that's crazy about this line, and you always feel bad to kind of talk about a game.
Is it 16?
The line is, the last I saw was 14.5, which usually when you see a 14.5 point line, you're seeing an over-under that's like 48, 50, 53, something high where there's a lot of points going back and forth. To see a 14.5 point spread with a 43 over-under, they're basically predicting a 29-14 game, which, while that kind of seems generous to the Browns, honestly, the way that those two teams are going right now, that's extremely rare to see a 2-touchdown favorite. So this just kind of gives you an idea of not only how do the sharps see the Seahawks, the people setting the lines, but also the money, right? Like, people are understanding, here they go again. And it's so cool because we've always had those teams, other teams were always, well, here come the Patriots, or here come the Steelers, or here come the Giants, like they do every year, right? Yep. Well, now the Seahawks are one of those teams, and they might be the
Will
team.
Ferrell was on NFL Network, I think it was NFL Network today, talking about, it's the Seahawks again. You got to watch out for them.
I mean, if I was a Panthers fan or a Cardinals fan, and I still think those two teams are a little better than the Seahawks. Even if I was a fan of one of them, which if I was, I would definitely think my team was stronger than the Seahawks. That's the one team I'm hoping somebody else knocks off. I don't want the Seahawks can beat anybody, and they have the potential to humiliate you in the playoffs. Like, they're that good.
You think the Cardinals and the Panthers? Okay, what if we had Marshawn back?
I knew you weren't going to let me get away with that.
What if we had Marshawn? I mean, because there's a very realistic chance that when we get into the playoffs, we'll have Marshawn back in the fold. If it's Panthers versus Seahawks or Cardinals versus Seahawks with Marshawn back, and with, say, Luke Wilson is healthy enough
in Arizona and Carolina.
Yes.
Coin flip, man.
I like our chances.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
coin
you have
flip.
to like it.
Yeah.
I mean, those two teams are so good at every positional group.
They are.
And that's the thing that's tough to beat, because when you're good at every positional group, then if the run game's not working, you can go to the pass, vice versa. You can trust your coverage more, you can trust your pass rush more, allows you to be more creative on defense. I don't know. I'm going to need to see something with Marshawn, like a fully healthy Marshawn. Yeah, I'd probably pick the Seahawks. But we haven't seen a fully healthy Marshawn in a really long time.
Which is going to be amazing.
The thing is, Rawls gave them the luxury to keep pushing Marshawn Lynch out and not bring him in until he was absolutely 100% ready. Now the pressure is going to be on to get Marshawn Lynch in.
Okay, but is it? And again,
well, Marshawn's not going anywhere Marshawn doesn't want to go.
And so are we going to rush him back for the Browns? No. Are we going to rush him back for the Rams?
No, but I think the Cardinals was kind of the earliest that he was going to come back.
There seems to be a very good chance that we're going to have the 5th spot locked up.
Yeah,
and
they'll
we might
have
be able
the
to
second
do a
spot.
4th.
Sure.
And if we have the 5th and they have the 2nd, that game is going to be very interesting, because Pete doesn't like to take his foot off the accelerator in any way. But how will it be different when they know they can be meeting in a couple of weeks from that, or in 3 weeks from them?
Yeah, you might see a couple of stripped down playbooks in that game
on both teams.
Yeah, that would be super.
That would be a
interesting.
fascinating look. If you go back and watch the all 22 of that game, if we get to that situation versus the first Seahawks Cards game, because the Cards were throwing everything, the Hawks were throwing everything.
Sure. Yeah, no doubt. That was a heavyweight fight.
That was.
For sure. They were trying to knock each other out.
That was the first heavyweight fight of the year.
I agree. Well, I think that Bengals and the Panthers games were too, but those guys were both swinging from their toes on that one.
But just imagine a fresh, healthy, hasn't been playing all effing year, Marshawn, just walking in the starting lineup in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Because that is going to be... I pity any team we go up against.
Sure.
We've fallen in love with Rawls because there's just
we should have.
Yeah, exactly. So electric when he's running. He hits the holes so hard. He hits the players after the holes. He's so incredible that we've kind of forgotten Marshawn and our love of Marshawn. He's going to be fresh. He's going to be fresher than he's been all season. He's been nagging with shit the entire year, and there's a chance that he is going to come in right at the playoffs. What could very well be his final year as a Seahawk. That's going to be a motherfucker on a mission.
And I think the thing that we haven't talked about either is the O-line he ran
Yes.
with earlier this year is not the O-line that's there now.
That's a good point.
And you put
Yep.
Marshawn behind the O-line that is blocking as well as this.
Holy
If you go back to the first run
cow.
of this game with Thomas Rawls,
Yeah.
the 16-yard run.
Oh
off
my gosh.
I mean,
Yeah.
that hole that Gilliam, Sweezy, and Lewis opened up was phenomenal. I mean,
Drive a
just
car through it.
that was a
Brilliant.
beautiful.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful lane, and I'm so glad that Fox went and showed you the aerial view because you got to see how freaking large
Yeah.
of a hole that was. But if we have an O-line that's clicking like they are now, and you put a healthy Marshawn,
And that's
back
why
there,
when you say
it's really
that
exciting.
those two might be, better, it's the thought of, it's like we've forgotten Marshawn, and I think he's going to come back if he comes back.
If Marshawn comes back as the 1,400 yard, 15 touchdown back that he's been, I'm taking the Seahawks over everybody. I'm putting that out there. Yes, I think that I am hedging by not expecting that because I have no idea how long it takes full explosive conviction-backed movement when you've reportedly had a muscle stapled back onto a bone.
Yeah.
hopefully it's 3 weeks.
Right. hopefully it's 3 weeks. I don't know. And so if Marshawn comes back and he's a threat to carry the ball 28 times for 125 yards and be able to get third downs and shorts and fourth downs and shorts and short touchdowns, I think the Seahawks beat everybody. I do. If they don't, I don't know. I'm just.
Then it's a difference.
It
it's a
is.
whole
Yeah,
different
absolutely.
ballgame.
And I don't
But-
think I would have put that much importance on Lynch until the Rawls injury.
Yeah,
absolutely.
If we say, oh, well, the Seahawks have shown that they can just keep passing and maybe the run game doesn't have to be quite as good or whatever, maybe, but they're going to spend the next 3 weeks putting film out there of this high-profile passing game and running all of these routes in situations where defenses are now, on 3rd and 3 where it's maybe goes one way or the other. They know they're not going to try Bryce Brown up the middle on 3rd and 3, right?
Which
So
means
that's
they'll
going to
probably
be.
try Bryce Brown.
Hopefully, right? Hopefully
if Bryce Brown could have gotten yards on that 16, 19-yard run that Rawls had.
Sure,
Bryce
right.
Brown could have gotten.
Yes, no doubt. And I actually, Bryce Brown used to be arguably the highest recruited football player in the country coming out of high school and had like 200-yard games for the Phillies at one point. The Phillies. For the Eagles. The talent is there, right? Maybe they untap it and it's great. Ideally, right? Ideally that happens. But, and I hope that they do box left-handed. I hope that they say, well, you don't expect we're going to do it with Brown, so we're going to try it, right? But NFL
that's
teams
kind of
are
what you
smart.
expect. Even with Dwan, they still had 25 rushes.
Yeah.
They
still
did
were
not
rushing.
change what
Sure.
they were doing.
And you can do that against the Ravens.
And you can do that against the Ravens, and hopefully you can do that against the Browns, and hopefully you can do that against the Rams.
Sure, but in terms of are they going to beat the Panthers and the Cardinals, I don't think they can beat the Cardinals
unless-
by just doing token runs to make sure we get to 30 carries.
Yeah, no.
I think that they need
I
to
agree.
be getting
Yeah.
4+ yards a carry. So, but a fully healthy Marshawn has shown he can do that against any defense. So, yes,
very well
if he comes
rested,
back,
yeah.
I'm taking the Seahawks over everybody on the road.
Well, look at the first Niners game this year when he came back off of injury and he got 9 carries in that first drive for a touchdown, and he had 125 yards or something that game and was explosive and made Aaron Lynch lose his jockstrap in the hole, and he was just
Lynch on
phenomenal.
Lynch violence.
Yeah, he was phenomenal.
There's
But-
something we've forgotten about
Yeah.
because we've fallen so.
And
much
I don't want to come off as
I'm not
as
saying
selling
not, because
Marshawn
this
short
is,
at all.
This goes beyond here. This is what I see on Twitter and everything. And then there's where's Marshawn and blah blah blah. I don't give a shit where Marshawn is rehabbing because he's the toughest guy and the most hardworking guy around. He is obviously going to be kicking ass. It's just one of those things where you sit back. I saw a picture of him on Twitter today, and you forget that look with the gloves coming out and the the visor. It's like, this is such a badass motherfucker.
Yeah.
That we can get him back in the playoffs,
Sure.
there's nobody that's in our way.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. And
Wow, that was the biggest fan 5 minutes I think I've had in the entire podcast.
thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
But it is. It's giddy, man. It's so
and
cool.
And that's the thing, right? Is that Marshawn is special, and of course every NFL team wants special players, right? But I think that Pete Carroll, and I'm in no position to say he does it more or less than other teams, but Pete Carroll talks so much more than most coaches about finding players who are special and adaptable and who do things that don't fit a system. Because when you have a player that doesn't fit a system, he becomes something much greater, right? He becomes an option. And an option that defenses have to get out of their comfort zone for, right? There's no such thing as a comfortable defense when a fully healthy Marshawn Lynch, who's been listening to Lil Boozy for 90 minutes before the game and hyped up on a sugar rush, like that is a terrifying thing.
And all these other guys have had 16 games worn out of their legs, their bodies.
Yep.
And he hasn't. He's just had
That's
4
true.
or 5, and all of a sudden the fact that we've been to 2 Super Bowls, that abbreviated off season, it doesn't matter to Marshawn.
Yeah.
So if he can get healthy from that injury and all of his quick little nicks that he had early on, if he can be healthy for 4 games, that's all we need.
Thank you, Brent, because I have been stealing myself against. I basically just prepared for the Seahawks to go without Marshawn Lynch the rest of the way. That's just kind of what I have been assuming, that they're going to have to adapt. I've been very pleased with how well they've done that so far. But I haven't really let myself embrace the idea that, hey, we might be getting Marshawn Lynch's last charge for the playoffs. And
that's exactly it.
That is actually a truly special thing. We talk about special players. Marshawn is definitely one of those. He's a singular human. And Pete Carroll values singular humans, not just singular players. So, yeah, and I do think that there's probably a mentality that is present with Marshawn Lynch that isn't without him. So, now that you've put me to the point, I would say a fully healthy Marshawn. I'll take the Seahawks over anyone, even on the road. But when I was saying that I think the Panthers and the Cardinals are more talented, I think Marshawn is that difference.
Yeah.
Well, Marshawn, in the absence of Rawls, is that difference between Seattle and those 2 teams. And I do think that the 3 best teams in the NFL are now in the NFC.
Yeah, well,
I agree.
This is the time of year where we saw it this last week with all the injuries that the Hawks have had. This is the time of year where there are more of these injuries that start to creep up as people's bodies are broken down. So what a team is now 3 weeks out from the playoffs and what it could be drastically different.
Is Carson Palmer going to get nicked again?
And
you never know.
Yeah, you don't know. Jonathan Stewart with the Carolina out for a little bit here.
Is it crazy? He's the 3rd leading rusher in the NFL.
Yeah.
That is so nuts to me. That dude has been around forever and banged up forever. That's crazy.
LeGarrette Blount went on the IR today.
The Patriots, man.
Right.
If the Patriots get back to the Super Bowl, it'll be Tom Brady's greatest work. This is unreal.
But this is the time of year where you start to see the culmination of these injuries start to deplete rosters. And if the Hawks can get healthy, which in the past they have tended to do towards the end of the season, if we can get healthy minus Graham and Rawls, because those 2 are done for the year, they're sitting in a phenomenal position going forward. But we got 3 games to go, and that's a big if.
It's amazing. We have talked about the Seahawks for almost an hour. Haven't mentioned the defense. That's an incredible thing. The defense was great. You don't have a ton of time left.
Defense was great.
To talk
we'll
about.
See you next week.
Tackling was great again.
Tackling was great again. And that's, I think, the biggest thing.
What did he say? Carroll said on Brock and Salk, he wants 5 missed tackles or less.
Yeah.
And I think he said last week was 3. And I think that this week again was 5 or under. That's
all
you can ask.
Yeah, a couple of turnovers. They won the turnover battle again.
And that's the thing, the thing that did concern me was, again, That combo route between the red line and the sideline, Kamar Aiken had 3 big catches on in that game. I mean, that is a subpar quarterback throwing to, sorry Ravens fans, I'm assuming a subpar receiver, and gashing the defense. When that's Carson Palmer to John Brown or Michael Floyd or Larry Fitzgerald, when that's Carson Palmer to Greg Olsen or Ted Ginn, if that's Tom Brady to Rob Gronkowski, that's what I'm not worried about Clausen and Aiken as much, but the Seahawks have only beat 1 good quarterback so far this year, and they're going to have to beat 3 good quarterbacks at minimum in order to win a Super Bowl. That's what I need to see, and it's not something we're going to really get a chance to see maybe until the playoffs.
And into the second round even.
Yeah, honestly.
Possibly,
So it's a great chance to build a lot of confidence, but there's got to be an answer against that combo route down the sideline, because that play's been working against the Seahawks for 4 years.
Yeah.
There hasn't been an adjustment made to it, and Minnesota lacked the ability to take advantage of it, but the Ravens, who aren't much better of a passing offense, maybe worse with Clausen, were able to, and so that does have me a little bit concerned against those good teams, because in order to win the NFC, Carson Palmer and Cam Newton have big arms, and they can wait an extra half second to let their receivers get another 10 yards further downfield before they throw that, and really stretch it out. So that's really my one concern with the defense, because obviously they're playing well, right? Like the 13 points in the last 2 weeks, right? They've been superlatively great.
The defense has given up no touchdowns.
No touchdowns. There you go. That's
Special
amazing.
teams
What is
and
that?
field goals.
Is that 5 games this year they haven't given up?
Yeah.
But they've all been against bad offenses, and so
That's what you're
supposed to do.
It is.
Exactly
It
it.
is.
No,
But that doesn't get you to the Super Bowl. They
No, it
haven't
doesn't.
stopped a good offense yet this year.
Yeah, I mean, I
They
I
haven't
agree.
stopped one good
haven't-
offense.
There hasn't been that point where the defense, like you mentioned in your tweet earlier, that you feel like the offense could beat the defense.
I do.
The defense definitely feels a tick down.
I
But
feel
it was
like
weird
every-
they weren't blitzing Clausen as much as they should have. Even though it was
Yes.
Clausen.
I think that the 10 best offenses in the NFL right now all put up close to 450 yards on the Seahawks. Like I think all
But
of the
that
good
might
offenses.
be the game. That might just be. That's the way it's going to go.
Yeah.
And for the first time in 4 years, the offense will be able to score enough points to overcome.
They're capable. They have
And
shown
that
they're
just
capable.
Might be the way that this team's set.
Yeah, it's a nice place to be in heading into this final stretch where now we all feel very secure about their playoff chances and about getting that 5 seed and playing a bad NFC East team. This is as good as it could have gone when they were 2-4, right?
Yeah.
This is we're there. So I'm sure we'll have lots to talk about. We'll see a lot more clarity.
We're going
in
to keep
terms of
talking once the camera's on.
who's who.
Yeah.
Always happens that way. But until next week, we'll pick you back up then. Big thank you to Evan, Joey, and Nate for hosting us
And
again.
Joel for
and
filming.
Joel for
Joel
just kicking
Littler.
ass. We can't
And
do
James
anything
for coming
without
down
it.
and visiting.
Yep. James leading the charge in the audience today. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you next week.